Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most famous ideas in all of personal finance, the Rule of 25. For a lot of people, this is the simple formula that cracks the code on financial independence. So let's break it down.
It's the question that kind of haunts all of us, right? How much money do I actually need to stop working? Doesn't matter if you're 25 and just starting out or 55 and planning the final stretch, trying to figure out your number can feel, well, pretty overwhelming.
But what if the answer wasn't some crazy complex algorithm? What if, for decades now, people in the know have been using a surprisingly simple, elegant piece of math to figure this all out?
Well, here it is. It's called the Rule of 25, and the idea is just beautifully simple. You figure out what you spend in a year, you multiply that number by 25, and bam, that's your target, your financial independence number. It's basically the flip side of the famous 4% rule, and it gives you a clear, tangible goal to shoot for.
Okay, but wait a minute. Where did this number 25 even come from? I mean, can we really trust a simple rule of thumb with our entire future? To answer that, you kind of have to go back in time and see how we went from pure guesswork to actual data science. So before the 90s, the advice was, well, it was pretty flawed. People would just say, hey, if your portfolio earns 8% a year, you can take out 8%. They completely ignored that markets go up and down. Then in 1994, this financial planner, William Bengen, had a revolutionary idea. He stress-tested withdrawal strategies against the worst market crashes in history, and that's what gave us the 4% rule. A few years later, the famous Trinity study came along and basically confirmed he was right. And this table, right here, this is the bedrock. This is why the rule exists. The Trinity study looked back through decades of market data and found that a portfolio with 75% stocks and 25% bonds had get this, a 98% chance of lasting for 30 years, even if you were pulling out 4% every single year. I mean, 98%. That's what gave the Rule of 25 its credibility. Okay, so it all sounds pretty solid, right? 98% success? What could go wrong? Well, this is where the plot thickens, because there is a hidden danger that can completely wreck a perfectly good plan. It's called sequence of returns risk, and honestly, it's the #1 boogeyman for anyone just starting retirement. Here's the deal. It's not just about your average return over 30 years. What matters so much more is the order in which you get those returns. That first decade after you retire, that is the danger zone. The timing of a good market versus a bad market right at the beginning can literally make or break your entire retirement.
So let's look at this. This is the dream scenario, right? You retire, and boom, the market takes off. Your portfolio grows so fast in those first few years that your withdrawals barely even make a dent. In fact, your nest egg just keeps getting bigger. Your plan is pretty much bulletproof at this point. But what if you have bad luck? What if you retire right into a nasty bear market? Now you've got this toxic combination of pulling money out while the market is tanking. It creates this death spiral for your portfolio, and it becomes almost impossible to recover. It's the same person with the same amount of money, but a completely different and devastating outcome. All because of timing. All right, so that last part was a little scary, I know. But the good news is, the thinking on this hasn't just stood still. That exact risk is why researchers have kept digging, and what we know now is way more refined than the original rule. And get this, the guy who invented the 4% rule, William Bengen himself, has come out and updated his own research. He says that with a more modern, globally diversified portfolio, the safe withdrawal rate today isn't 4%, it's actually closer to 4.7%. And this isn't just academic. The real-world impact of this is huge. A 4.7% rule means your multiplier isn't 25 anymore, it's 21.3. So for someone who needs $100,000 a year to live on, that drops their target nest egg by almost $400,000. That's a game changer for sure. But it's not just the math that's getting an upgrade. It turns out our own human behavior provides a natural safety net. Researchers have a great name for it. They call it the spending smile. You see, the original studies assumed we'd spend the same amount of money, adjusted for inflation, every single year. But that's not how people actually live. We tend to start with these active, high-spending go-go years. Then we naturally ease into the quieter, slow-go years where spending just falls. And eventually, we hit the no-go years. This natural spending curve gives your portfolio a huge break, a built-in safety margin the old models never accounted for. Okay, so we've talked a lot about theory. Now let's get real for a second.
Because even the most perfectly calculated plan can get absolutely steamrolled by two giant real-world variables: taxes and healthcare.
You've got to remember, a 4% withdrawal doesn't mean you have 4% to spend. Think about it. Taxes and investment fees, they create this shadow withdrawal. It means the amount you can actually put in your pocket is always going to be less than that headline number. You have to plan for that tax drag. And for anyone in the US thinking about retiring early, there is a massive hurdle coming up. Right now, enhanced healthcare subsidies are set to expire at the end of 2025. What does that mean? Well, for a typical 60-year-old couple, their annual premiums could literally skyrocket from around $6,600 to over $22,000. That's an expense big enough to blow up an entire retirement plan.
So, after all of this, the history, the risks, the updates, the real-world problems, what does it all mean for you? Well, it means we should stop thinking of the Rule of 25 as a rigid, turn-by-turn map. It's much better to think of it as a compass, a powerful tool that helps point you in the right direction.
The journey to financial independence is definitely not one size fits all. And that's why the whole FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, has evolved. Now you have all these different flavors. You've got lean FIRE for a minimalist life, fat FIRE for a luxurious one, and then these cool hybrid approaches like barista FIRE or coast FIRE. Each one uses that same core math, but they adapt it to fit a very different kind of life. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The real goal isn't just about hitting one magic number. It's about building an entire system, a system that's smart about taxes, that can withstand market shocks, and that's flexible enough to change as your life and, frankly, the world around you changes too.
Which brings us right to our final thought. From the original 4% rule to today's 4.7% guidance, and with massive real-world hurdles like healthcare costs on the horizon, the only constant here is change. So the real question isn't just, what's my number? The real question is my entire financial system built to adapt?